For the rest of our guests, we have a very special guest joining us today. He is the managing partner of a Silicon Valley-based venture capital firm, 500 Startups. His company specializes in discovering industry patterns of economic opportunity and investing in entrepreneurs who will realize them. To date, they have invested in over 2,500 companies across 78 different countries. This person has also personally led notable investments in Southeast Asia tech startups, including Grab, Carousel, Bukalapak, Canva, and others. So if there's anyone who truly knows about combining technological disruption and entrepreneurship, it would be this person. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Khailee.
Hey, what's up everyone? I am here today and I'm quite happy to be here with you in what I think is a very special time for Edgenta, but also an even more special time for society. Very current on all of our minds right now, things that are happening to our friends, people we know, people around us. So I'm very, very proud to actually be speaking to folks over here who are actually doing something about it. I think the kind of work that Edgenta does, it's almost as though you guys are frontliners, you know what I mean? And so today my job here is to use the little time that we have together to be able to actually share a couple of really powerful ideas, which all of you are already working on to some degree, but some of them may be very counterintuitive, you know what I mean? That I think can be very powerful for you to utilize. Now, the first thing is why am I even speaking to a GLC, right? Like Edgenta. The key reason is because governments around the world work with their GLCs to actually respond to societal needs. And to combat what's going on in society and to really turn this situation around, the governments really lean on working with folks like Edgenta, right, to really make this happen. And they can't, a lot of the problems that we're facing, you just can't rely on some startups to do it. You can't rely on some MNC to just come in and do things for society, It's a very specific and important set of problems to take care of society that government as well as SOEs do, right? So this is why all of us spending our time here today with such urgency is so critical. Now, I have 5 ideas to share. The first one is that, and I alluded to it a bit earlier, is that Edgenta plays a role that no one else in society plays. The things that Edgenta can do right now and to activate are the very things that other people may only sometimes dream of being able to doing. The stuff that you've done to actually create the COVID assessment centers or hybrid ICUs and spin this up, in a matter of weeks, right? From idea to execution so quickly. It's not something in a normal case any private sector company can just make happen. And the larger role, right, to connect a lot of the innovators in society, a lot of the young startups and the fast-growing startups as well, to actually connect them with the actual customers that Edgenta is really serving, not just in Malaysia, probably regionally as well, to be that bridge. Again, this is a role that only Edgenta can play. So I think the first big idea is to really embrace the fact that there is a very, very special place and a very special opportunity it really rests upon folks like Edgenta to make happen. And more importantly is that although they start off as little experiments right now and they get to scale so quickly, and getting to that level of scale is not something that a lot of innovative startups or even a lot of private sector folks can really make happen as well. Now, so that's the first point about understanding that state-owned enterprises, GLCs, actually have a very important role that nobody else can play. The second big idea is that a GLC like Edgenta actually moves faster to get these things done compared to anyone else. A lot of people they could talk, GLC slow, this is slow. No, it's actually the opposite. There are very specific things that you have already done that can be done at light speed versus anybody else, right? So it's not just you can play that role, but you actually can do it much faster than anybody else. So take other type of companies or other type of coalitions to actually make something happen. It's not easy, to actually coordinate and make it happen, right? But because of the connections, the structure, and also the energy of all the Edgenta Stars that's being put into these efforts, you actually can move much faster than anybody else. So those two ideas, that you play a very special role and you can move much faster, it leads me to the third one, right? is that what happens when you're playing that role as a real innovator, as a real pioneer, a real first responder, you're playing that role, and you're moving at that pace. How will people start to feel? How will the Edgenta Stars and all the talents that are involved in this, how will they start to feel? A lot of you are already feeling it. You know what I'm talking about. You know, you feel the adrenaline, you feel that rush, you know, where you know that you go into a meeting, you talk about, oh, you know, we can do this, we can do that, and you have zero doubt that it actually can be done. And a few weeks, a few months of time, bam, suddenly it's happening and it's live, right? To have the idea, the speed of thought to execution kind of manifests itself so quickly, like it's a really beautiful thing. I call this leading a high resolution life. Why do I call it high resolution? When we are watching YouTube, okay, let's just imagine we're just on YouTube right now watching, and let's say internet connection laggy, slow, or you're doing some dial-up, old school dial-up or something, right? Back then, 56K, it takes forever for a video to load. Load also is all blur, you know, 240p, 120p, you know, and you're going to the settings button, you're like, oh, you know, can I increase this, you know, can I increase this up to like 720, can I increase it up to full HD? Living a life where you just kind of like operating at a low resolution type of life, where the connection speed and information transfer is very slow. What people normally do that in their line of work is that they actually go home and then they will download or they will just stream on Netflix or watch other things, because it's more exciting to actually watch Netflix. In fact, like I and nothing against that life at all. I think it's very relaxing to be able to spend time like watching stuff, right? But if all you want to do, or the majority of your time, is really indulging and enjoying watching somebody else's life, and to actually transport your mind into a different world, it is because that world is more exciting than your world. That's sad but true, right? But the opposite is happening for Edgenta today, where so many of you are ignited and called upon into projects that go at such speed that it's so exciting to get a COVID assessment center, hybrid ICU, to create massive transformation in a short amount of time, that you are lit. You're almost like getting high on that stuff. And to be able to experience this kind of high bandwidth, kind of like 5G kind of thought process, you know, you go to work, you're on Zoom calls with your colleagues, you know, you chat one, two, bing, bing, you know, things start happening so fast, you start to get an addiction for it. Then in your downtime, you know, you still indulge in watching some things that you like, but you know it's like, oh, I don't want to watch too much. Why? Because there's something else that's more exciting. And that's the work that I'm going to do at Edgenta. This is one of the core reasons why some people who are leading like high resolution kind of thinking, you know, they actually end up joining tech startups, or they actually join different environments that allow them to move faster. But that's in the past. Right now, GLCs like Edgenta is proving that being in here can almost give you an even higher resolution play. You can move even faster and do even more unique and scalable things. So the invitation today to actually experience and lead a high resolution life is open for all of you. All of you are already seeing so many of your colleagues, and most of you are already really getting into it and getting used to this way of working and living. And I'll tell you, like, you look back on just like 12 months of this kind of life, high resolution, you look back 24 months, right? You will recognize, you know, some of the amazing things that you can achieve together. Now with that, I have two more ideas. The fourth one is that what happens when you're already moving faster than anyone else, you're doing something that only you can do, and you're experiencing this group teamwork at high resolution speeds, right? High resolution kind of like experience that you're having. The fourth thing that you want to do is that you actually want to set a goal that is higher than you believe it's possible. You think, okay, this kind of reasonable goal, conservative, and you want to set a bit of a higher goal. So to explain, to really unpack this concept, I'm going to tell like a short personal story, if that's okay. Now, quite many years ago, I founded a news company called says.com, right? So it's an online news site. You know, eventually we sold it to Media Prima, and today it continues as a very large news site. But in the early days, you know, we're just trying to make the bills. You know, I'm just trying to make enough sales so we can advertising sales. You know, so we can actually pay salaries. Now, at this point, it was the first time I actually brought on my first two salespeople. And at the time, I was personally selling a lot of the sales, and I was doing about 20 to 30K ringgit a month. I brought them on, Caroline and Charlotte, right? I brought them on and I said, look, we're going to do 1 million ringgit this quarter, right? That's our sales target. Let's go for it. You know, they look at each other like, I saw in their face, I mean, they didn't believe me, I can tell, you know, I didn't have to say anything. I knew that they thought it was crazy. But I told them, I said, look, why don't you believe me? They said that, well, you're the boss, you personally are selling 20, 30K a month, we just joined, how do you expect all of us, 3 of us to sell for like $1 million ringgit in this quarter, you know? And I told them, I said, look, I don't expect you to believe me, let's just give it a try, right? And because if we don't do it, we'll never know what we're capable of. So let's give it a try. And they said, okay. I gave them like a sales bonus as well, right? To really hit it, you know, to $1 million ringgit, you know, and we just worked on it, right? Fast forward 3 months later, and we're the last week, and it is the last day of that quarter, right? We are only at 725K ringgit, thereabouts. We're not anywhere near to $1 million, and with only 1 day left, right? Especially if those of you are familiar with media and advertising sales, it's not easy to actually make like that happen in 1 day. So the team was very defeated already. In the week, I could see their face were very defeated, and me also, I was also like, oh man, you know, like, how do I actually do this, you know? But at about 4 p.m., I called up one of the media agency folks, right? I told them, I said, look, this means a lot to me and my team. Like, can you get this order kind of signed together, you know? And I know the client already is really interested in it, you know, can you kind of make this happen? And so that fella went all out, right? To just like go beyond, to really call the clients and sell everything. 6 p.m., the fax thing came in. There was like, you know, the order came in and it was 280,000 ringgit. So it moved us all the way up to past $1 million ringgit. I've never seen my finance manager, like she was like an older, you know, she was a different generation from us as young punks, let's put it this way. She was like dancing around with the fax, it was like crazy, you know. So all of us were very, very happy, all of us like really celebrated, and it was like a very emotional thing. But I'll tell you why this story is important. It's not about the sales target. What happened 1 week later totally blew my mind, okay? Charlotte and Caroline and I were just having celebration, just, you know, amongst the sales team. It was just like 3 of us, sales team pull out. But, you know, 3 of us were talking about it. And then, so we're celebrating, and then Charlotte said, hey, I got something to share with you. I said, what? She said, I broke up with my boyfriend. I'm like, okay, should I be happy or sad or what? I mean, congratulations on a new chapter, right? She said, no, you don't understand. I was in an abusive relationship for 12 years, and I was physically abused for 12 years. And I was like, what? I said, I mean, I didn't know what to say, right? I mean, it was kind of like a very shocking thing to be in, right? So she continued to tell me, she said, for 12 years, I stayed in that relationship because I didn't think it was possible for me to have the strength to leave. I didn't know whether I could make it on my own, you know? But after achieving the $1 million ringgit target in that quarter, which I thought was completely impossible, but now that that's done, I see that actually I know what I'm capable of. So I broke up, you know, I moved out, I got a new place, I set up my new apartment, I'm living in this place now, right? And this is the one biggest problem in my life, I completely overcame it. So I want to celebrate this, I want to thank you. So that incident really taught me about the power of like using a lot of the things we do at work for a practice for a higher purpose, or practice for actually like a higher personal challenge that we may or may not face. So the reason why the 4th idea of setting a very high goal for yourself, and if any of your managers or if like Nizam or you know, whoever have like a goal that sounds a bit impossible, all I'm saying is be open to it and just like dive in and give your all to it. Because when you prove to yourself that something that you didn't believe actually happens, your circuitry, like there's something in you that completely changes. And if those of you have experienced it before, you know what I'm talking about. Those of you have experienced it again and again, and it's now like a muscle already, like congratulations to you. But I would tell you that, you know, it's not just not just Charlotte, but later Caroline as well. She had her own personal things that she overcame. And it really became one of the biggest inspirations for myself to really build companies and also to work today as an investor and work with entrepreneurs to overcome impossible things. And this gift of life, this miracle of life that is possible, I want you, all of you, to be able to experience it individually as well, which is why I'm encouraging you to use the environment that you have here at Edgenta to use that as the practice ground, as the dojo, you know, to really to be enable and unlock the gift for yourself, right? So that's idea number 4. Just go for a higher goal, so high that it's going to give you that effect. Okay, I'm down to my last idea. You guys ready? It's idea number 5. I grew up in Malaysia. I think a lot of you may have the same experience. A lot of you here may be Malaysian as well. And I think growing up in Malaysia, I always kind of like look overseas in some way. I always feel like, oh, you know, like overseas, you know, like people are doing this, or overseas is better, Malaysia like not good. You know, so I feel like there's a bit of that self-kutuk kind of culture lah. I don't know what it's about lah, you know. And for a long time growing up here and then, you know, experiences going overseas as well and just coming back, I feel that sometimes that really holds us back, right? And for maybe historically, it may be true if you want to compare Malaysia and this and that, but I'll tell you that today is actually a very different time for Malaysia. I've never seen Malaysia like this before. And I've been away from Malaysia for I think about 6 years so far already, and I've come back during the pandemic and I have never seen Malaysia the way it is, but in a very different way. You see, everyday Malaysians like you and I, we are also different now, you know. Like I've never seen like my mom using so many apps and ordering everything here and there. My mom's almost 70 years old, right? And she's telling me what apps to download now, you know. I've never seen that, you know. Like my wife and I were getting our groceries from this farmer. He's like a proper farmer, like, you know, like a WhatsApp group, you know. And then he's just like, he's got his like loyal customers, and he's just like, it's very interesting that everyday Malaysians are really transforming themselves. But the way it becomes more extreme is when I look at some of the unicorns that were birthed from Malaysia. When I look at My Taxi, right, which is founded by Malaysians, that become Grab. And having worked with them directly, even before like My Taxi really came about and in the earlier stages as it became Grab, I've seen how they, as everyday Malaysians, have come out to build these amazing things. Like Khailee, the co-founder, she's from SMDU, you know, that's a high school in PJ, near my high school. So I grew up and I spent my high school life in SMK Damansara Jaya, right? So you see, like someone who's like from SMDU really built a company that is the largest SPAC in the world right now. 40 billion US dollar IPO. 40 billion, that's like a 160 billion ringgit company in a span of like what? Almost like 8-9 years, is less than a decade, right? Like what Khailee and Anthony went to Taylor's College, right? And some of you may have even gone to school with some of them. These are everyday Malaysians in a lot of ways. Then we talk about Carson. So one of my companies that we've made the first investment in, now is a unicorn, of course. Some of you may have bought or sold cars on it. Like I know many people in my team, and you know, it's become like $1 billion US company. Eric is from my high school. He's from SMK Damansara Jaya. In fact, people don't know this, but he didn't even finish college. You know, he joined college for 1 year. He's just like, I don't know if I can really make it, you know. And then he quit college. He did MLM. After that, he did MLM. What else did you do? You know, he was just like trying to find his role in life. So for all of us Malaysians right now who feel like we are everyday Malaysians, like just take a look around you. Everyday Malaysians are building towering things. And myself, you know, I don't have any, look, I grew up without any of these ambitions at all, you know. I'm just like surprised how the internet industry has created, and digitization has created an environment for us to succeed. I would never in my life also imagine being involved with and being leading an investment firm. Like today we've got 2,500 investments in 77 countries, of which 27 of our companies are worth anywhere from $1 billion all the way up to 60 billion. And we got another 100 plus companies worth 100 million to $1 billion. I wouldn't have thought these kind of numbers were possible, you know, as far as from an investor's lens is concerned. I think that everyday Malaysians are building amazing things, and it's not just tech companies. I'm super inspired by what AirAsia has done, you know, and having kind of worked with them and worked with Tony Fernandez as well on some of these things, like to watch someone like Tony take something from such a dire situation and really build like a new super app, right, that spans the region. And not only build that, like it's not built by Tony per se, it's actually built by the people who work at Asia. I'm sure many of you have some friends who work in Asia as well. I've got a lot of friends who work there as well. To have that environment to actually set impossible goals in a span of months, do high resolution action, teamwork, right? And to do things that nobody else can do it faster than anybody else, right? Like, he has proven that a public listed company that is in financial trouble can really reinvent itself that way. I like, hats off, you know? And again, it's not just tech startups built by everyday Malaysians to become tech giants. It's not just transformative experiences like AirAsia, but you see even our government agencies like EPF. I have some friends who work there during the first pandemic. You know, they really, to just make sure that people can really engage with EPF and do the withdrawals and whatnot, right, in a digital way. They hacked together the app and the digital experience in a handful of days, you know. To have EPF build and ship an app in a handful of days, like, that is like, this is a new Malaysia we're talking about. Everything that you look down on or kind of like had some doubts about in the past, you can put that behind. Like, this is 2021 and everyday Malaysians are doing these things. And with that, this is the same experience that I'm seeing in Edgenta. And like, from the first time, like, I met Nizam, and from, you know, all the interactions I had with all the various team members at Edgenta, something special is happening. And you are already doing the kind of things that the tech giants can do, that AirAsia has done, you know, and you're doing it again. I have to repeat it again. You're doing it faster than most people, faster than anybody else, and doing very, very special things that only you can do. Now with that, those are my 5 ideas. On behalf of all of the tech startups that we've invested in, we are here to innovate with you. We are very humbled to be able to have a chance to have an audience, to have a connection point. We want to be part of your future and your connection points to the Edgenta NXT marketplace and the procurement and any other kind of big ideas that you have. Because so far I've seen that your ideas are as big, if not bigger, than the startup ideas, right? So let's work together on some really cool stuff. And I know that the leadership here is calling on you, calling on all of you and inviting all of you into this revolution, this renaissance. I know that your fellow friends and loved ones, who some of them may be in dire situations, they want to feel hope. They want to feel strength. That we are not only just going to overcome this round, that we are actually prepared for COVID-19 or any kind of whatever shocks that come may, right? Whatever things that can come, like, we're prepared for it. So this is a very, very special time, and I'm so grateful you invited me to join you in this feeling. You'll be really surprised how far you can go, how far Edgenta can go, and how far Malaysia can go in the eyes of the world. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are very excited to share with you a discussion between industry leaders and entrepreneurs on the topic of resilience in the new digital economy, striking a balance between efficiency and innovation. The panelists, who are captains in their respective fields, are Mr. Syahrunizam Samsudin, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of UEM Edgenta, Ms. Nadiah Awani, Director of the Institute of Corporate Directors Malaysia and Group Chief Executive Officer of Thomson Medical Centre Life Sciences. We also have Dzuleira Bakar, Group Chief Executive Officer at Technology Park Malaysia Corporation, as well as Mr. Azwan Baharuddin, Managing Director of Accenture Malaysia. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this interaction was pre-recorded on an earlier date and is brought to you live for the first time today. And for this panel, I'll hand it over to the moderator, Ibrahim Sani. Ibrahim, over to you.
Thanks for staying on for this particular launch. It's always interesting to see what's next. And of course, Edgenta NXT launch is the big thing. But the conversation now, we just want to pivot it and see how this revolves into the digital economy era, particularly the resilience in the new digital economy era. And in this forum discussion, we're going to try to see if we can strike a balance between efficiency and innovation. We have an illustrious panelist right now. Nizam, of course, the CEO at Edgenta Berhad. We have Nadiah Awani, the Executive Director, as well as the Group CEO of TMC Life Sciences, Dzuleira Bakar, Group CEO at Technology Park Malaysia Corporation, as well as Azwan Baharuddin, the MD of Accenture. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the time to speak with us. We'll start with Nizam. Of course, Edgenta NXT is being called upon as one of the key elements from your key offerings to propel businesses towards digital transformation. I want to understand a little bit better how this digital transformation is going to be materialized and not just become a buzzword in Malaysia. Nizam.
Hey, thanks, Ibrahim. Thanks, everyone, for being here for our launch. Edgenta NXT is our first tech company. So we're intending to deploy facilities management services through pieces of software that we provide for our clients, whether in healthcare or commercial or industrial clients. What we do is that, given that we've been in MCO for the last year or so, a lot of the services that we have involve people. Obviously, it still involves people, and a lot of our software have been used to actually remote monitor a lot of these assets. So what we've done with Edgenta NXT is to pull together some of these software and now put a lot more intelligence in it with AI, as well as a lot of other nifty pieces of things that we're doing right now to allow us to do a lot more facilities management without really having to deploy our people. So a lot of companies now who want to utilize their own resources can use our software without our resource being deployed. It's great for international business because we can work with partners locally, and it's also good for Malaysia, where we could actually use our software more than we can deploy our resources that we currently have now.
And of course, launching something during a pandemic adds new challenges. It requires a lot of industries to actually think about how they do their work. Let's toss over to Nadiah one. Because of this, we've seen a lot of spotlight on the healthcare industry. Your industry has taken decisive action to curtail the virus from continuing on its path. It doesn't know technology, it doesn't understand any form of economic slowdown. It doesn't get the memo. How do you think this pandemic will be remembered? Do you think that this will be a very, life-changing kind of tragedy, or it's going to be a momentous period for us to actually do things differently?
Well, obviously, I hope for the latter, but I do think that COVID's accelerated a lot of trends that we see in healthcare. Telehealth, I think, is the most visible manifestation of that, the fact that people are comfortable now doing consultations, being monitored at home digitally. And I think that the other part here that's also increasingly becoming important is data and transparency, real-time tracking of what is happening on the ground, which is actually really important for decision makers to make decisions about how we manage this pandemic effectively. And in order to have that transparency and also dynamic monitoring, then there must be systems that are on the ground, that are automated, that are tracking this, because we are talking about numbers that are impossible to manage manually. And so the systems that are being put in place now are likely to really change the way we view things and make decisions in the future, particularly for healthcare, and that is a good thing.
Of course, Dzuleira, the conversations that both Nizam and Nadiah has brought to the table is actually quite important for us to understand the context of how this is going to be rolled out in Malaysia. There is this idea of Malaysianization of technology. How do you think this will significantly impact the domestic economy and our society?
I think as far as how we operate currently and in the last 1.5 years, I think it would have been almost impossible without the use of technology and digital. So prior to this, I think technology, digital is just a buzzword. People want to get into it, but they're not sure whether it will work for them. And I think in the last 2 years, it has become an imperative, right? It is something that you have to. If you're not on it, then you can't operate. I think with that, there's just a growing importance for people to onboard technology, right? For companies to onboard technology. I think we work with smaller companies, and we also work with mid-sized companies who want to onboard technology, but some of them don't know how to. So I guess from a government's perspective, we're looking at how do we help? How do we incentivize? How do we make it easy for technology onboarding? How do we make this in a more seamless process, right? To ensure that things actually work for the country, and ultimately it is really the backbone of the country moving forward, right? Technology and innovation. I mean, it does sound like a buzzword, but without it, I don't think there's anywhere for us to move forward.
the consumer trends is also changing quite rapidly. Consumer demands, wants is of course very interesting to be had. We'll circle back to Dzuleira later. Right now, I just want to bring Azwan into the mix. Do you think that consumer demand and trend has shifted? Do you think that the pandemic has disrupted traditional B2B approach, forcing companies and organizations to leap into actions as uncertainty and volatility become the new normal?
Thanks, Ibrahim. Actually, technology has given birth to the rise of fantastic substitutes. Troughs, I just made that on the fly. It's not substitute brands, but a complete reinvention of industry. You know, why bank with banks when you can invest? Why have broadband when you have 5G, which is much faster and available everywhere? You know, why aggregate certain types of spending for best deals where you can actually aggregate all of your life spending and get the best value for you as a consumer? You know, why have many relationships as a consumer or buyer when you only need one who understands you perfectly? Everything is in your phone. Everything. It starts with cloud, fast and clear choices and competitive prices. And hence, I guess that's why we have Edgenta NXT, cloud, marketplace, and procure. Very logical, in my opinion, right? But actually, what we've seen is in the industry, in Malaysia specifically, before going to Malaysia, let's talk about global. 30% of our companies expect to return to pre-COVID levels of revenue growth in 2021, and 3% expect to recover by 2022, right? The laggards, for example, companies that postponed digital transformation, and those who were pursuing it slowly had a rude awakening. They were brought face to face with all their shortcomings, limitations, lacking the digital foundation needed to rapidly pivot. Actually, not easy. A lot of companies are wait and see, but while they're waiting and seeing, the bus has left the station, unfortunately. It's getting too late. You know, it's a plane's about to take off. You're not even at the airport. How not?
Nizam, are you part of that company that thinks that businesses will return to normal? Are you part of that fraction that Azwan was talking about?
Well, I'm not sure what normal he's talking about, but there is going to be a sense of normality that companies will come back to, but not the same one that we left after COVID, right? I think we're going to be a different company. It's already different. The markets are different. The way the customers are asking us to review our contracts are different. The services scope is different. They want cheaper, better, faster, more tech, as what Nadiah said. And I think it's natural that they move that direction, because if they're not already on tech, as what Azwan is saying, they want you to take them on the bus. And I think that's really the priority now for us. We've got to bring our clients with us. Otherwise, we don't have much of a business to look forward to.
Yeah, but it's also about market reception, right? Whether or not the people are ready to receive new types of services and offerings. Nadiah was talking about telehealth. I'm okay if it's a non-invasive kind of procedure, if it's something that can be done online. But Nadiah, do you think that patients are ready to be receiving treatment through telemedicine? Do you think that there has to be a sort of education process that needs to come along hand in hand with healthcare providers like yourselves?
Well, I think they may not have a choice. Definitely patient education is something, but I think that we are all dealing with a constraint worldwide of healthcare resources. And interestingly enough, I think that it's not just about teleconsultation, but increasingly looking at things like remote monitoring of ICUs. So we now know that it's not just about equipping an ICU, it's the people that have to manage the ICUs. And in many countries in the West, and also increasingly in countries like China, they are building remote ICUs in rural areas where the patients are admitted there, but they are all remotely monitored by specialists in the more urban cities where these people are residing. And of course, in China, where all these things are being embraced, they're even doing remote surgeries. And so it's really a question about increasing access. I think that technology is enabling increased access for areas, particularly where such resources may not be so readily available. And it's also enabling people to have that access in a more sustainable, financially sustainable manner, because obviously by decentralizing many of these services out of like tertiary or quaternary care, where care is more expensive, then it becomes, I think, a lot more financially feasible. So I think technology is actually opening up a lot of frontiers for healthcare. Obviously, it's scary for people, but I think that something like COVID is really doing, it's really putting things in stark perspective. When you have very few options and you're literally talking about life and death, then people are more open to innovation, because the risk of doing business as usual actually is higher.
Of course, speaking about innovation and speaking about investments, right? I think we have to talk about R&D. Dzuleira, we know that TPM is a national driver of innovation and technology. How do you think R&D and, of course, market testing simultaneously done together with the R&D is being rolled out during a pandemic? Do you think that companies are ready to receive new items, new products, new services in line with what the market wants?
Well, the hard truth is, I think surviving this pandemic, we've been very reliant on foreign technology. I think you're talking about local R&D. It's we're actually realizing that we are actually at an all-time low here in terms of spend into the R&D, in terms of quality of R&D coming out. A lot of it is actually spearheaded by corporates. I mean, thanks to corporates like Edgenta for that matter. But from a supply perspective, from an R&D perspective, I don't think there's much quality, so to speak, for now. So I think the quest right now is to accelerate that, to increase quality, to identify what the gaps are, empower and give them whatever is necessary. Because I think the real issue is we have a lot of people coming up with lots and lots of R&Ds. We've got a lot of university working on R&Ds, a lot of our RIs, research institutions working on R&Ds. But a lot of these R&Ds are not demand driven, right? They're always, they don't have a real fit. They don't have a real problem that they're solving. That's really the issue. And when we have a real problem, like the pandemic, for example, we are forced to sort of import solutions, right? I mean, starting from vaccines for that matter. So I guess it's a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle. We are nowhere close. We're nowhere close to solving it as a country. I think that's really the effort that we're trying to sort of pull together.
When we know that some R&Ds, in fact, a lot of R&Ds don't have a product market fit, or might see a fit not now but later.
Never.
Wow, okay. Does the role of entrepreneurs, small, medium-sized enterprises coming up, these type of companies have a better or quicker solution that larger organizations can use? Do you think that they have a role now?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I definitely think that they have a better role to play because they are operating in a situation, how do we say, they're operating in a playground where it's actually engulfed with all the problems that they're already solving. They're not sitting in an isolated environment where they actually create R&Ds in labs, right? So it's actually operating from a place where the problems arise. So I think there's a lot more opportunities for entrepreneurs like this, definitely.
Regulatory requirement, policy improvements are also needed to be looked at, particularly in a highly regulated industry, like, for instance, healthcare. Maybe we can circle back to Nadiah Azwan. I know you're there. Hang on for a bit. But Nadiah, do you feel that the reliance of us talking to policymakers, to industries that are heavily regulated, like the pharmaceutical industry, that requires a whole host of approvals from NPRA approvals, MDA approvals, and so on, do you think that they need to, jump on the bandwagon and make things quick as well, or else we are going to be slow in servicing the market? And particularly an area where healthcare is important right now, we need to have solutions quick and fast. What do you think about this?
I think it's, healthcare regulation exists, right? Because there are also moral and ethical considerations. There would be issues, let's say, if the public were to question the independence of a regulatory body like the NPRA. But I think that where the opportunity lies is actually to make the governance and stewardship of healthcare to be the responsibility of one organization. And because healthcare actually involves more than just health services, right? It also involves health financing, like health insurance. It involves pharmaceuticals, like what you said. So they're actually, at the present moment, being overseen by multiple ministries. And therefore, perhaps it would make sense to have a central regulator, perhaps, like what we have for capital markets, for example, to look really at the regulation of the healthcare industry and what are the changes that are required to actually make it a lot more dynamic and responsive. Because as you said in your preamble, the virus or whatever healthcare challenges that we face is not going to care about the existing governance structure, the existing infrastructure that we have. It's just going to do its own thing. And the question is, how fast are we to actually respond to these challenges in a way that still safeguards, I think, the responsibility and accountability that we have to the public, priority on patient safety and privacy of data and things like that are actually at the top of the mind when people think about healthcare.
Sorry, when you say things like regulatory, central regulatory body, the only parallel I can think of as quick as now is the central bank, Bank Negara Malaysia, regulating the financial industry. So we have the Ministry of Finance, we have all the other ministries out there, but the central bank kind of regulates everything, and they're rather quick to market, to be frank. Are you looking at something like this for the health industry?
I would think that that's a pretty good example to follow. So, for example, the financial industry is also very highly regulated, but we can see the innovations that are coming out of it, like with fintech and things like that. And I just feel that healthcare is also ripe for that kind of a paradigm shift, for that kind of innovation to happen. But in order to enable that, I think that regulatory and stewardship is important, because you need to incentivize the right behaviors from the players, but at the same time also monitor them. And as we all know, healthcare actually cuts across various industries, and it should not be the sole responsibility of the Ministry of Health.
Azwan, let's bring you in now, because you do provide a lot of overarching view, being a consultant, and we all know how consultants love consultants speak, but you're one of the rarer people that wants to talk about things in layman terms. The issue here is that there's a want from the healthcare sector on having a more improved efficiency. There's a want from TPM right now who wants a solution and R&D based on product market fit. How do you see Malaysian companies rise up to the challenge and meet these kind of wants and demands?
Well, that's a tough one, to be honest, and that's, I think, something that everybody's been trying to do. We've got so many agencies, as Dzuleira would know, right, trying to do that. It's always a matter of having a dialogue with authorities and having them to better understand the technology. I think that's always the first. I think if you think about when you start having a conversation around cryptocurrencies and all this new stuff, right? I think a lot of people don't understand how that works, and when they don't understand how that works, the conversation is going to go nowhere, right? So I think it's also about having the right environment to enable innovation to work. Why is it that everybody wants to get a product or something, they go to Singapore and kind of there's many reasons for that, right? It's regulation, but there's also the fact that they get easier access to cash, for example, right? So then they can launch from there to the rest of the world. I know it's a point that we all cannot tahan lah. I mean, honestly, it's true, right? I mean, but it happens, right? That's a tough one to crack. I tell you the other bit, right? The other bit is also, for example, how do you get, for example, all the startups, the guys with plenty of ideas, to be successful when if they want to kind of present something to a potential big buyer is potentially GLCs, right? But GLC procurement style is, where have you done this before? What you put up capital?
Yeah.
And what? Hello, finished, ready, habis.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
But I thought the rule number one for businesses to solve a problem is to understand the pain point. That's what we've been taught again and again at business school, at whatever, all these accelerator programs. That solving the problem, the pain problem. Sometimes it's strange. A pain problem as this big, right, needs to be solved, and no one is coming up with a solution. How do you think this is going to be approached anytime soon? No,
I think, look. If you talk about solving problems, arguably you could say the big boys would have the financial muscle, the capability to solve the problem. But let me tell you something, right? So perfection is the enemy of progress, right? And large organizations want perfection. That's why you have so many meetings, forms, SOPs, policy, documentation. Get lots of that, but very little done. There are many blockers in the universe. Mainly to exist to remain relevant. Also, they think that. I'm not saying you should get rid of it, but you have to do business. When you do this, right, you have to start with exactly the exam. What is the exam question? Don't answer 20 questions as one. What's the exam question? If the exam question is how do you get the best healthcare to the people in as quickly as possible or cheaply as possible to as many people as possible, those are three separate questions that you solve separately, right? Of course, ideally you want to solve them all. But sometimes, what happens, I think in most conversations that we have, we start with one problem statement and suddenly you want to solve world hunger. This is where it goes wrong all the time. Because why don't you just add, not so simple?
And I think to add to that, solving problems is not just about solving the problem, right? It's really about connecting all the pieces, like Nadiah mentioned, about the governance structure, the regulatory structure, the necessary foundation to actually make things happen. I mean, the ultimate question, why do people leave and go to Singapore? I mean, for very simple reasons, because they make things easier for you, right? So I think in Malaysia, probably that's what we have to strive towards. And I think, I mean, representing the government, that's what we're trying to do lah at this point. But again, to have everything centralized, to actually make it seamless is a real challenge. It's a huge challenge, as much as there is will from the top, right? So I guess a lot of what we're talking about is really conversational lah, you know, because we don't have the right structure to actually support all of this.
But
Okay.
sorry, Ibrahim, I want to add. So it's very interesting, right? So Nizam is there, you know, observing, you know, it's like, okay, so because what he's trying to do is try to solve those problems. He's trying to solve the problems of the market. When you got the procurement, you got a marketplace, you know, you got this cloud. He's trying to solve for the problems, but then he's also got the problem of trying to convince his leadership that this is the way forward. From where you are, from cleaning services to God knows, you got so many things, and trying to make that cohesive. It's always going to be very, very difficult. And education of not just what happens in the real world, the technologies and the processes and the opportunities that resides out there in the market today that is not being addressed needs to be well articulated by CEOs like Nizam, to be honest.
Okay, look, the conversation that I had with the McKinsey managing partner of Malaysia last year, he was talking about the primary accelerator of digital transformation initiatives. It's not a good CEO, it's not infrastructure of the government, anything, none of that. It's the pandemic. Nizam, do you see this as an opportunity or an opportunistic time for you to roll out these kind of services right now?
Yes, I think it's absolutely the right time to do everything. But as what Azwan is saying, you almost have to line up your ducks all in a straight row. And to Nadiah's point, you have to engage, communicate, do another round, engage, communicate, and do another round. It's a constant engagement of your ecosystem so that people really understand how you're going to change your products and services and go to market, right? And you've got to skip a few steps. I think a lot of people tend to take the view that, oh, I need to digitalize what I have today. Forget that. I think you need to skip a few steps. You got to think about where is the end goal you want to have your company do certain things, you know, with your clients. What's your vision? What do you want to have, right? And maybe some of those steps are not ready yet, but you got to actually go there. Because if you don't, what you tend to do is you get stuck in what you have in the company, right? And in my recent travels in the last few months, what I've seen is that countries are moving in different paces against the pandemic, some faster than others. But the amount of value creation in the tech industry is phenomenal. Look at India. Look at Indonesia, right? Their vaccination rates are not as close as us, but look at the amount of value creation, venture capital funding, private equity funding, not to mention unicorns that has been built. What you're seeing is an unprecedented innovation that's taking place by the young people, and I need to say this, Ibrahim, we need to really embrace and hug all the young people in this country, because we need to give them the empowerment to help us change. They are the change agents, and I've been repeating this to my own family. Because some of us think that we're young within a certain age, but I think we have to let go. We really have to let go, right? Because what we have to do now is really get them to drive it, and then we're sort of coming along for the ride and helping them, right? And then in that process, we get better at doing what we're doing, right? And hence why we did Edgenta NXT, because I wanted to hire a whole bunch of young people. Not to say old people like us don't have a place, but I need a whole bunch of young people to start driving this thing a little bit differently. Yeah. So what I've done is I've hired young doctors, I've hired young clinicians, different types of mindsets, technology people, AI people, right? They're not doing cleaning business. I mean, the cleaning operators play a very important role, and we have to always take care of them. But how do we actually, one of the questions I ask them is, how do I get the cleaning operators to be a fully tech on, digital, right? What does that mean? Does it mean using the phone? Does it mean they're proficient in doing certain work? So we need to enable that, right? But young people do it so well, and they do it with a lot more patience. We get too irritable. Like I know Azwan will get irritable 5 minutes if someone doesn't serve him. Like I need that, right? I need that. So and that's one of the things that I see that we have to do a lot more of, Ibrahim.
Okay, so just to recap, the millennials, the youngest of the millennials are done with university at 25. We're now talking about Generation Z that is entering the very strange world that we're living in right now. And at the same time, we know for a fact that the economies that you spoke of, for instance, India and Indonesia, they have a vibrant young population, they have a vibrant economy, but at the same time, they are plagued with this pandemic, crippled, debilitated, right? Brazil, so to speak. So it's not that easy trying to have economic growth without proper healthcare and health infrastructure to go hand in hand. In Malaysia, we've seen how the pandemic was okay initially. Now it's being, critical, right? I'm trying to be politically correct here without, ripping my shirt in half. But the story is, we can't grow our economy until and unless our public health sector is being serviced and managed. How do you think this decoupling of management of both the economic sector versus the healthcare sector is going to take place? Do you feel that, I'm throwing this question to the floor actually, do you feel that it is imperative that we deal with both simultaneously, because it doesn't seem to work in terms of managing this health crisis at the same time growing our economy?
Tough one that you tossed out there.
I know, that's why.
Silence. Let me just
I don't want to
give
spotlight
a stab at it. Clearly, I think there are two immediate priorities when we're talking about health. Sometimes you have an immediate health crisis, right? So for example, like in the Greater Klang Valley, when we're facing a crisis now, when you have people literally dying because they can't get a hospital bed, then there are some public health measures that need to be taken in place. But at the same time, if you're going to tell people to isolate at home, a social support system must be there to enable them to continue living. So the thing is, if you tell people to stay at home, then the government needs to provide social support for those people at home. And I'm not just talking about food boxes, I'm talking about also psychosocial support. And we will have people who have family members who are being quarantined, who are being admitted, children who are left at home without anybody to care for them. So, while we're taking care of the health crisis, there are other things that we can do to make sure that people still have their life and livelihood. And after that, when the priority shifts, when we feel that the healthcare system, that the immediate crisis has passed, and we move to a more mitigation phase, it is how the economy can develop and develop in line with a way that is sustainable, that we can manage the public health issues in a rational manner. So it's not a situation where it's either this or that. First of all, it's also the timing of what are the immediate problems that we're facing. And secondly, what is the support system that is required in order to get through that critical phase? And then when we move to the mitigation phase, then public awareness and engagement becomes very important. Because when we talk about mitigation, it's no longer about the government directing people what to do. It is about the general public, whether it's the employers or anybody else really. What are the clear measures that they need to take in order to be able to continue living their lives in a safe manner? So I think that, this is something that we have been struggling with. Communications could be a lot better. The management could be a lot better. But I think that if we are not the only countries that are facing this issue. There are other countries that we can learn from. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just need to get our act together and get it done.
And I think it's also unfair to sort of expect everything to be in order, because it's not this or that. You can't expect economic recovery to go before healthcare or the other way around. And I seriously think that it should be tackled in tandem. Right, it should be tackled in tandem, because it both enables one another, right? You need to ensure that the economy is somewhat getting back on its feet before we can even start developing. Right now, I think a lot of families, we don't realize that a lot of families are really, really badly hit by even simple things like being isolated at home, right? So I think social support is very, very important. But I think at the larger scale, what is being done to actually get our economy back on track. I think the little things matter, right? At this point, the little things matter. I think we don't need to go into big, fancy policies at this point, right? And yeah, so again, it's not this or that, right? It has to be tackled concurrently.
Azwan, you see,
your earring is quite fantastic. It's hitting your.
I'm sorry about that.
I'm just going to make this a bit more fun. So I want to add to that, right? Actually, so you look at my business, right? So when I joined Accenture 2017, we were 2,000 people, right? 2017. Now we're 7,000. By the end of the next financial year, I'll be more than 10,000 people. What does that tell you? The economy, there are certain parts of the economy are shrinking, sure. But there are other parts of the economy which is actually growing. Let me tell you, actually, this is an idea of ask Nizam. So, for example, right, when we have the situation where the government hospitals are full during COVID, because I went through this myself with an employee 2 days ago, right? And then they're waiting in the hospital and they cannot get a bed and they require oxygen, okay? Who do you call? So everyone tells me, oh, the allocation by hospitals, you're going to call individual hospitals, you're going to call the administrator, etc., etc. Good luck, there's bed. Don't know whether they've got an ICU bed or not, and most ICU beds are full. And then I had to make some calls to friends, right, to help my one staff who immediately went to ICU. So I tell you what, where's the opportunity? Nizam, this is for your app, right? Why can't you have the app that consolidates all hospitals' capacities, right, for COVID? Then you use that as a conduit to drive the supply and demand, right, on both sides. I mean, that's... Do you hear that, or is it line very bad? Because
I'm just trying to... It's sinking in. The first part really sink into me that we are spending too much on consultants because you're going from 7,000 to 10,000.
Great minds think alike, right? Nizam. Great minds think alike. I was thinking, wow, consultants growing.
We bring perspectives.
No, I think MOH does have that system. I think they know exactly what the bed count is.
But you can't. As an individual, you can't. I can't.
Yes. I can't. No. I mean, and that's probably why, because they want to preserve how they manage the data, right? Because they want to make sure that there's integrity in that data, and then they want to make sure that they have control over it. I understand why. But at the same time, it's really difficult because the beds, the availability of beds and equipment and resources to manage must all come together at a time when someone needs it, And I think a lot of people just think, oh, I need a bed. Yeah, but you need a bed and you need the oxygen tank, and then you need a nurse, and then you need a doctor. And everything has to come together. And we don't have all that coming together at the same time for a lot of the cases, especially when there's a surge. And I can tell you, we just opened our first private CAC, and people are asking us about whether we have oxygen tanks in there. But I said I'm COVID assessment center.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, but they're calling me because they don't know, right? Do you have oxygen tanks? Can I book a hospital? Like people are just going there just to make sure that someone could connect them, right? So I get it. So I really agree to what Dzuleira is saying. We all got to do our bit in this kelang kabutness to just give people a sense of stability that someone could help them circumnavigate this. Although what Nadiah is saying is also very important, that we eventually will get it right if we just look at what others are doing and say, well, this model seems to work. Let's just do this and then get it done, right? Maybe not just one party, but a few people coming together and getting it done.
All right. We have touched on a lot of topics and a lot of issues. We're moving to the last 10 minutes of the conversation. And to draw this conversation to a little bit more of a focused notion, at least I'll attempt it to be a little bit more focused, is on what's next, particularly for B2B companies and those that want to think about a digital transformation journey that they want to embark if they haven't done so already. So we'll start with Nizam. Do you think that Edgenta NXT is going to be able to solve everybody's problems, or most likely than not, you're going to be solving one part of the problem? And what would be that problem that you're solving?
I think the problem for us is really to solve how do you do a business in managing assets, without the availability of human capital, right? I mean, because right now we want to reduce that number of people, blend that a lot with technology, right? And that means I need a lot of data. I need the buildings, equipment to talk to me, right? And so the first problem I need to solve with my team is how do I get clients to allow me to let their equipment talk to me? And this is something new, right? And that involves giving a sense of understanding of what we're doing, what we're building, and empowering them to use that data as much as we're going to have access to that data. We've never done that before. Before, they just give us a contract, you do the work, you collect the data, and you also fix the problem. But right now, what we're doing is we're sharing that opportunity because we need to create a larger pool of information that allows us to fix problems a lot faster. And then the buildings and equipments then get to learn through AI, to basically execute more jobs, right? So one of the things that we see for B2B companies is that we have to adopt policies like what we have in Singapore, where they have a digital facilities management, for example, or what they call smart FM. And the Singapore government basically will only deal with companies like myself that has a strong technology component. So for example, if you are going to deliver cleaning services, you must also deliver pottering services. And pottering services can only be delivered through a Grab-like app where the cleaning operators get instructions from an app to do multiple tasks within the hospital, so that the clinicians or the clinical staff are only doing the work that they're supposed to do, doctors and nurses, and then the rest of it are being done by people that are employed by us. So they run around and send documents or pick up staff and do logistic services within the hospital. And I think that's a very big step towards getting productivity and efficiency, and then relieving the clinical staff from their burden of doing some of these activities and focusing on the patients.
Nadiah, do you feel that the role of the private healthcare industry has been, I guess, under focus right now, and there should be or must be a greater role for the private healthcare sector to, rise up to the challenge?
I think what's been positive from the pandemic is that they have set up the mechanisms actually to have a proper public-private partnership, by which I mean the purchase of healthcare services from the private sector by the government, which previously before COVID did not actually exist in a very structured way. So for example, for vaccinations, for example, the fact that they can recruit so many private GPs and hospitals in a very short period of time, have a mechanism through Protect Health to actually reimburse, to monitor these purchase of healthcare services. This is the way forward, because actually, the provision of care can happen. It's whether it's private or public, it's just a matter of where the capital originated from in the first place. And so I think via these kind of mechanisms, you can see that it becomes a lot more efficient, and that the government doesn't have to shoulder the burden for everything. And so as we have these mechanisms, and then now, with home monitoring, Edgenta was the first to set up a private COVID assessment center. And part of that is actually monitoring these patients at home so they don't congest the COVID assessment centers or the clinics or the hospitals. And this is just another way in which we are actually recruiting the private sector to take up some of that burden. And so my hope is that in the future that these mechanisms will be expanded to look at other kinds of services. And now what they're discussing is hospitals services. They are putting in place this mechanism, and there's no reason why this should only happen during a COVID pandemic, because in normal times, it is not like the government hospitals are facing, constraints in terms of resources and manpower. And really, we should be looking at healthcare as a national agenda, and really not have financing be the stumbling block to Malaysians and people living in Malaysia to access quality care.
That single line caught my attention. The government shouldn't be shouldering most of the responsibility and burden. Dzuleira, do you feel that that's the case right now?
Well, it does appear so, because everyone, from the businesses to individuals to everyone that's being affected right now, looks to the government for support. What else is the government doing? What else is the government doing? But I think the other important thing to also understand is the government can only do so much, right? The government rather has got very limited capacity to shoulder the burden of everyone. And I think as far as the economy is concerned, you've got so many things running, right? You've got multiple things that you need to do to actually even get the economy up and running. But I think I have another important question that I wanted to address, and I also wanted to speak about, is the contribution to the economy in itself, right? You have almost 40% of the economy being contributed by SMEs, and then you have other segments of the economy contributing to the economy. But how much of this economy is actually enabled by technology and innovation right now? We don't have a strong contribution to the economy that is enabled by tech and innovation, which is why I think the economy is badly hit right now, right? And we're trying to get everyone to onboard technology, and even then, everyone's looking to the government. Everyone's looking for support to say, oh, can government give me grants? Can government give me support? Can government give me incentives to digitize my business? So it's a long journey. And the government obviously cannot shoulder everything, but the government can play an important role in facilitating, and this is where I think private sector will also play an important role. And because government and private sector, you can't quite separate them. So it's really a vicious cycle that we really need to connect everyone.
Got it.
Yeah.
Azwan, my final question to you is this. A lot of companies that I spoke to, and I do speak to a lot of companies, they all have that great ambition to embark on a digital journey and digital transformation. Some of them don't have the wherewithal to pull it off. They don't have the capital to get it done, or simply put, they're a bit too old, to get this working. They can't even, they don't know what TikTok is, put it that way lah. So, what would be some of the key messages that you want to share with us when it comes to companies, particularly business owners that's watching us right now? They know what needs to be done, they just don't know how to get there. What would be some of the ideas that you want to share with them?
Three things. So first of all, 82% of executives, actually in the survey that we did recently, said that the organization, business and technology strategies are becoming inseparable or even indistinguishable, right? 85% of executives believe that the organization's ability to generate business value will increasingly be based on the limitations and opportunities of their technology architecture. So here's if there was only one advice I would give after those 2 points is look at intelligent platform services. You have to get into a platform to succeed. Nizam is creating a platform for a B2B business, right? If you're a business, if you don't have one, first look at other platforms that's readily available and jump on it, right? Quite simply, for the consumer is the Lazadas and Shopees. In business, there'll be plenty which are similar. Don't go build your own. Look at alliances. My clients, when I speak to the CEOs of several CEOs, and they say, Azwan, Accenture is a very unique position because I actually can connect all these very different industries together for them to grow and differentiate even more against their competitors in spaces that they operate. This is blurring of lines in industry. Take advantage of the fact that there are many service providers out there that can make you successful. Don't do it alone. Use an ecosystem. That would be my ultimate advice.
Good advice. Nizam, final word before we end this forum.
Oh, I thought we're done.
No, okay. You're the host. The host has to say bye-bye.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Ibrahim, and everyone for all those great comments. But I think my final word would be that companies like us have an underlying responsibility to assist the government, not just in spearheading technology, but really to create jobs. And I think jobs, whilst people are complaining that they're not enough of, a lot of them are complaining they're not enough of the right jobs, particularly for the younger generation. And I think it's incumbent upon companies like us to continue to strive in developing those jobs so that we don't get left behind like other countries where the young people have all these really, really cool jobs, and I'm not really sure what they do, but they're doing something because capital is flowing to their companies. So this is the equation that we must unlock. We must invest in businesses we don't understand, because the people who understand it are the people who are younger than us, and they need to be able to access those jobs, access the capital to start those companies. And I hope with this, our new ecosystem with Edgenta Next, I can encourage more people to be in our industry, but they can be participating in not just from a vocational perspective, but also from a tech perspective, right? So
fantastic. That was.
We must create more UEM Edgentas. Maybe Azwan can consult all of them to become UEM Edgentas.
No, but the first thing to do is stop calling us all old. He keeps calling us old. I don't like it.
Oh, you are old. Nadiah, we're going to out our age here. We're approaching 40, that's the crazy bit here.
Approaching?
Yeah, approaching, bro. It's like a kapal terbang. That's it. That was our conversation with this illustrious and rather, happy panel that we have. We just heard from Azwan Baharuddin, the MD of Accenture Malaysia, Dzuleira Bakar, the Group CEO of Technology Park Corporation, Technology Park Malaysia Corporation, Nadiah, the ED and Group CEO of TMC Life Sciences, as well as Nizam Samsudin, the MD and CEO of UEM Edgenta. It's not easy striking a balance between efficiency and innovation, but at the same time, it's important for us to understand the tools that can make us available to understand to find solutions. One of them is, of course, Edgenta NXT. That's it for this panel, and thank you very much for staying on with us for this particular program.
Thank you, Ibrahim.
Thanks, Ibrahim.
Everyone. Hi,
Thanks for
thanks.
having us.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the end of our Edgenta NXT virtual launch event. Now, if you wish to find out more about Edgenta NXT, please do log on to www.edgentanxt.com. On behalf of UEM Edgenta, I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking time off to be with us to attend this launch. And I hope we all leave this event feeling energized and fired up as Malaysia progresses to becoming a digital nation. We can all look forward to see how Edgenta NXT will disrupt the conventional way of doing things for businesses and the other various industries. Ladies and gentlemen, exciting times indeed. Digital transformation is just around the corner. With that, I'm your host, Daphne Eiking, and I'd like to wish all of you a pleasant evening. Goodbye, stay safe, and until we meet again.